So welcome everybody to another episode of Chocolate Travels. My name is Joseph, and I'm here with JuanRa and Elisa from VAICACAO, and they are based in Italy. So we're going to learn all about the work that they do making chocolate. Welcome, guys. Nice to meet you.
Hey,
Thank you.
hello everyone. Thanks for having us, Joseph.
Excellent. So I know that JuanRa, you started off, I think, in the coffee industry, if I'm correct. So let's start off with that question. Why did you think it was a good idea to shift from coffee to cacao? I believe you were telling your dad, we should move from growing coffee to cacao. So how did that go about?
Yes, well, I'm Salvadorian, and in El Salvador, many people produce coffee. So it's been known as a coffee producing country for a long time. And around 2006 till 2009, well, early 2000, something like that, it was this plague called La Roya, which is a fungus that attacks the coffee plant and decreases the production. So it wasn't really me who was like suggesting to diversify to cacao, but my dad already was looking into different alternatives to sustain the family's farm, because it always depended on coffee production. But we had this natural reserved area for cacao, which always was there in the family's farm right next to a water sprout. So it just made sense back then. He was just like, well, cacao, it's actually from here, it's not as susceptible to this disease as coffee.
So he already had cacao on his property?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. There was this little untouched area preserved just naturally like that, right next to a water sprout. And it was just there, and it's beautiful. It was just something that no one wanted to really like replace to plant coffee. So we left it like that natural area for cacao. So it just made sense. And back then my dad took the initiative to found a co-op of cacao producers, and I joined in immediately. Around 2009, I believe, about the same time you entered your venture into cacao as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. Good.
Chocolate.
And so we know how that came to be, how you kind of shifted to cacao. So when and how did you guys end up in Italy? I think in Sardinia is where you are, making chocolate. How did that happen?
You want to take
Long
it?
story.
Yeah.
It's a long story.
No, it's a really fun, cool story, because Ellie was working in El Salvador, where I'm from. She was working for UN Women, and I was obviously doing a different type of work. And I was always helping out my family's farm on the weekends and as a side, just like mainly directing and planning, and not really going every day to the farm, but maybe like 3 times a week, which is still a lot, just to see how things were going. So long story short, I met her at the beach once. We fell in love. We got together. We got married in El Salvador. We lived there from 2012, which is when Eli got involved into cacao, until 2016, when things changed. I mean, it was sort of like destiny bringing us here, and sort of us trying to find a different road to the traditional cacao producing and trading and purchasing that was going on. So Eli, she's from Sardinia, and she decided to venture into this cacao enterprise here from Sardinia. So that's how we ended up here in Sardinia.
So Elisa, was it your idea to start making chocolate there?
Yeah, but we started making, well, it is different how we started. We started producing cacao nibs in El Salvador. So we tried, but firstly, we tried to sell the cacao beans itself to other bean to bar makers, in Europe, mainly in Italy. We tried at least. And this was our first step.
And in the US.
And because we were trying to have the farm, the Finca Cuyancua, to expand in the European market, the specialty cows. And then we said, well, we had some not good experiences, you know,
mm,
especially for the prices.
mm,
And said maybe probably this is not our, you know, this is not the way.
mhm.
So we started started with cacao nibs.
Yep.
And yeah, at the very beginning, we tried to produce them in El Salvador, and then to bring the cacao nibs in Sardinia, and then to grind them and making chocolate and everything. But at the end, for the quality control and everything, lots of stuff, you know, we felt like we'd love to make the product itself from scratch. Then we started to work with the cacao beans itself and making chocolate, the cacao paste and cacao nibs ourselves.
We could say it was like a ever-evolving, still learning process where when we naturally started as farmers selling our products, and then we fastly enough realized that the only sustainable way for us was to gain an added value by creating a finished product, and that's how we started. And still learning where the opportunities are, but
it sounds
really,
like the core was really about helping out the farmers and sustaining fine cacao in El Salvador there to keep it going, and it sort of just evolved as it went along, right? You found out what worked for you guys. Yeah,
still evolving, still learning.
It was a roller coaster, you know, learning process and everything, you know, but yes, at the end,
because there's so many niches in this niche, like the cacao fine chocolate world. There's so many niches where you can have a place, whether it's making chocolate, growing cacao, distributing cacao, whatever it is, right? So you have to find what works for you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Why did you decide on the name VAICACAO?
It was easy to pronounce. Va in Italian
it is
means
nice.
Go. Yeah, so you can pronounce it in Spanish, in Italian. You know, we want it to be like an easy going, an easy word.
Yeah.
So actually, there's no much romance in it.
No, but it's simple and it sounds very nice on the tongue. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
And so, what did locals in Sardinia think about your single estate chocolate? You know, I know a lot of European countries and Italians especially can be very traditional with their foods. You know, brands are very important sometimes. So, you know, you guys come with El Salvador cacao and nobody knows who you are, and you start making this chocolate. What did locals think? Were they really, wow, this is amazing? Or were they kind of skeptical? How was the response?
They were amazed, actually. Yeah. People, from the first day, you know, they've always been very interested in what we were doing, and they are actually very, very nice to us.
Yes, we're blessed here in Sardinia because not only in Italy do they have like a very strong culture towards food and like knowing where they're sourcing everything from. So when they saw us with this new project trying to do something from Sardinia, which is just like one of the hottest places in Europe during the summer, they were just like, wow, this is incredible that you guys are doing this here. And then the experience, whenever they tried it, it was just like reintroducing to a version of chocolate, because they were just used to the traditional, very sweet, very common chocolate. And we were coming in with this new terroirs from El Salvador that no one really had, because we practically developed them within our family's farm or the other farms that we work with. And it was just like a new experience for them. It's just like, I didn't really knew that chocolate tasted this way, because we came in with a totally different approach to the regular Kinder Bueno and Nutella that they find here.
Right.
Yeah, but they are familiar to you know, we produce here in Sardinia a lot of olive oil, you know, liquors and cheese. So yeah, when you talk to them about especially cacao and the craft chocolate, they feel like they understand what we are saying, so they appreciate it.
They appreciate because they see you making it there from scratch, and they like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that we also have the farm and everything.
Right. And what did they think? You know, were there some people that, because craft chocolate's not for everyone, right? It's some people love commercial chocolate and the way it tastes, and then you get into fine chocolate and it's very unusual. But it sounds like in Sardinia there, people just really enjoyed what it was. Was that true for everybody, or were there some people that you had to sort of convince a bit more? Was price an issue for them?
Yeah, I'm not
Yes.
gonna lie. I mean,
Yes.
we're never going to be able to please everyone, and we're not even willing to do it because right now we're only launching very high percentages of cacao with 2 ingredient bars. So as you can imagine, if someone was expecting something sweet, we've had those experiences, feedback like, "Whoa, I wasn't really expecting this. This is amazing," or "Whoa, this is too bitter for me."
Right.
So it has been really cool because we have been learning directly from the market's feedback, to put it like that, uh, what they like in the nuances of the cacao, whether it's if it's a little bit too fruity, too floral acidity, and different tones that they really never experienced before. So yeah, it has been like a very, very satisfying experience to see the reaction in people's face every time
Yeah.
they try one of our chocolates, and very distinctful taste.
Have you guys tried doing any pairings, like any, because local liquor or local cheeses or things like that? Have you guys done that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have worked
Many times.
with a couple of wineries here that
Oh,
they
okay.
even, whether it is with white wine, or some of them also have like this little jello from the grapes that goes really, really good with nibs. It's amazing. Then with the cheeses, you can also add on some. For nibs, I rather go with cheeses, and then the chocolates with spirits.
Okay.
But yeah, we've tried lots of different collaborations with local enterprises here,
And also with local ingredients. Yes, but we love to do that actually. It's incredible,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
experience.
lovely. So what can you tell us about where you're sourcing cacao from today? I know you're sourcing some of it from your family farm, JuanRa, and also other El Salvadorian farms, and then I think a couple other countries too. So tell us about
yes.
the cacao that you source, where it comes from, why you chose the ones you did.
Yes, well, currently in El Salvador, we're sourcing from 5 different single estate farms. We want to be very specific about where we're sourcing from, because it's a very bad misconception to think that all cacao from one country tastes the same. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just like wine in different regions of the same country can taste different depending on genetics, sun, soil, interaction with local weather. So from El Salvador, we're directly importing it ourselves. We have another company who acquires locally, so we're able to transmit the farmers very, very good farm gate prices. Let's say that at the beginning we started about paying, I'm going to say it because I mean that's the only way that we're going to make a difference here in this industry. We started buying at around $450 per kilo farm gate directly to them. Now, after so many years, we have been able to raise it to $750, and we pretend to keep on buying at a better price. So in the case of El Salvador, we source it directly, and we work with our family's farm. Then from the co-op that we help to create as well, which my uncle is there involved. We buy from Finca San Fernando, which is from my uncle, which is a really cool story because it started practically me and my cousin were surfing, and it was just like, yo, we're in this really cool co-op where we're reactivating cacao. Maybe you want to consider it for any land that you have there abandoned or it's not being put to use, or if you have any other crops. So it was fun because they came in and they were just like really into the project and planted a very, very expansive area pretty fast, faster than we did initially. So it was very cool to also help out develop that part.
Why do you think they were so excited to get involved in that?
Because they had already seen what we did in Cuyancu, and which is our family's farm. So it was easier to convince people when they see something already done, and then I was practically advocating towards the benefits of cacao and countering global warming and how it creates like jobs and opportunities for lands that are abandoned or poorly used, per se. So they believed in the project, and the same way as Benedicto Morataya from Finca Parras Lempa, which we use for Tlaloc cacao, Hacienda La Carrera, which is one of the biggest farms. They have been doing their own thing for quite a while now. So we're super happy to also source from them directly. And recently we just added this other cacao from El Copinol Escondido, which they're practically rescuing this criollo variety that we know for a fact that it's DNA tested, because we also have become aware of other two cacaos coming from this same hill in El Salvador. So just from that hill, we have found 4 different criollos, but obviously criollo, it's very scarce, very difficult to work with. So in this recent import, we were able to get 15 kilograms. So we're also supporting him to continue to expand his.
Not a lot, but it's exciting that
Not a
you
lot,
get to use it and see what happens with
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
And that's El Salvador. From Costa Rica, we source from NAWA, which is a collective of farming families, the same as Fedecovera in Guatemala, which is a collective of Quechua and Comchi ethnicities from Alta and Baja Verapaz regions. And they're super
Nice.
cool. They have been leading the reforestation in Guatemala since 1975, I believe.
Mm.
They also have cardamom, coffee and other crops. And we source through them with a specialized broker. Whenever they send them cacao in their containers, they send us our orders, our projected forecasted orders. So yeah, based on good relationships throughout the time, we have been able to develop our own personal network of cacao farming partners.
And do you have a hand in how the cacao is processed specifically on your family farm? You know, did you have to, who does the fermentation and how does that work?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm not there doing it physically all the time, but with all the farmers, we always give feedback. We have been able to reach to a point with a matter of time to get to a point where, after trials and errors and identifying areas to improve, we have been able to reduce times in the fermentation boxes or identify certain critical circumstances in the drying beds that could remove acidity per se, or allowing airflow to it. So yeah, with time and lots of feedback, we have been able to collectively identify where we really want to have these cacaos in terms of quality.
Okay. And I know some places in the world it can be a bit challenging sometimes to work with farmers, you know, because they want it maybe some certain way, and then, you know, the maker sort of wants it a certain way. Is it pretty easy to work with the farmers that you work with?
Well, it has been a working relationship. I mean,
Right.
We've been putting effort and time into it since 2009. It has been easy because people have been open, and not everyone is willing to accept what we're asking. And then we also have to be realistic that we're not the only ones trying to acquire their beans. So it will happen that someone else will come and will be like, no, I want my fermentation at 50%, or I want it at 60, and I'm asking them for 80, 85. So we're always there back and forth. So they know that for us, we have our drying and fermentation protocols that we have developed together. And for other customers that they might have, then they do what they can or what they want. So yeah, it can get confusing at some times, because farmers will be like, well, but you asked me this, and the other guy from France asked me that, and the other guy from the States wants it like this. So it could be challenging for them, but
that's an important thing to bring up, because a lot of consumers don't realize this sort of stuff happens behind the scenes, right? They think, oh, you grow the cacao, you ferment it, you ship it out, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Yeah. Good. And how would you describe the flavor of cacao from El Salvador and the chocolate made from it? So obviously, like you said, a lot of people oversimplify regions, countries, right? You're saying that there's many types of cacao in El Salvador. So what are some of those flavors that you can share with people watching?
Well, in comparison to the other terroirs that we work with from Central America, Salvadorian cacaos have more fruity aftertaste to it, ranging from like brown fruits, which could be like mango, brown fruit, or banana, a little bit ripe banana from Hacienda La Carrera, which is what we use for lenca. Then switching to our family's farm, Cuyancua, which used to have coffee at the beginning. It has this floral acidity to it, very much like jasmine and vanilla.
But also has a coffee flavor, very present in coffee.
But it's very floral, it's more acidity. Then what would you say? Tlaloc, which is
They're
Parras
super
Lerpa.
fine. They're very fine. I mean, they're fruity, like gentle,
Mm.
amabile. We could
In comparison to, for example, Guatemala, which
Yeah.
we source from Fedeco Vera, which their cacao, it's amazing because it's very round, it's very bitter. It has this nutty aftertaste, very little acidity. So it's great to have a different range
Right.
to help people discover the real flavors of cacao.
And would you say that, let me see here if I'm asking that later. How do people in El Salvador view cacao? You know, your family, obviously you can speak for your family, but maybe in general, is it seen as part of their culture? Is it very important? How do people look at it? Is it becoming more important now than it was before? What would you say?
Good question.
Yes, that's a very good question. Thanks for bringing it up. Cacao, it's very, very intrinsically there in Salvadorian history, way before we even became a republic. Obviously, cacao nowadays, it's still used in the indigenous ceremonies and religions, and not really religions, I'm sorry, ceremonies and gatherings, as to pay a tribute to the Nahuales, which are like the, I want to say gods because it wasn't God, but they worship many different elements.
Okay.
Yeah. So cacao, it's still used to pay the Nahuales, but unfortunately around the year 1800s, 1800, there was a big shift from cacao being produced in El Salvador and replaced by coffee. And then obviously people culturally, the culture kind of like was stripped away from their traditional uses, and now cacao, it's mainly used as a candy, not really as a food as it was. Like it was just like the main source for adoration and worship, and it was like the drink for the gods and the elixir for the elites, and it was more traditionally used back then. Now unfortunately it has been lost. There are lots of new tourism waves that are romanticizing a lot the antique, and they're trying to make up new beliefs and everything, which can lead to cultural appropriation. And we want to be always very respectful and acknowledge the cultural aspect of cacao in El Salvador. But then again, we have to acknowledge that right now we're living in a rediscovery of cacao as well in El Salvador, not only as a food.
So today though, do El Salvadorians, do they partake, in this ceremonial type of thing, or is that sort of lost for most people today?
The ceremonial aspect in El Salvador, that it's not really about drinking the cacao, but they use it as an offering towards their worships. So for example, the traditional indigenous ceremony there will be like, you will gather around in a circle around a fire, and you will pay with the cacao beans and do 13 circles and give 13 beans. So traditionally it was used like that. Now with tourism and lots of fairy tales happening, then people are implementing lots of different blends and fusions of different cultures from Asia, and doing sort of like tea rituals and drinking the cacao as well, because they're discovering that cacao can have lots of positive aspects towards the body if you drink lots of it, at least 40 grams in a cup.
Okay. But how do, if you went to the major cities in El Salvador, do people have this sort of in mind of the sacredness of cacao or eating good chocolate, or is it more about commercial American candy bars,
Yes.
Yeah.
Commercial. Okay. Yeah, a lot of commercial chocolates in El Salvador. I can say that they used to drink tablilla, which is the round disc with which is made half of cacao and the rest is sugar. So it's very sweet, and they used to drink it at the breakfast, for example. And it's very common to do that. They drink chocolate every day. But yes, in the commercial one, of course, they are, in my opinion, I lived there. And in my opinion, they are not really aware of what they had in the past and what it was for them. So now, probably now El Salvador is rediscovering is cacao culture.
Juanra, does your family and friends and do you guys go back and share the chocolate made with the cacao? And if so, what do they think of it?
Absolutely, yes.
All the time.
We always like to share what our creations here in Sardinia with the farmers and our family and friends. And obviously, initially, everyone was just like, "Well, but you guys are going into too bitter. You should do it a little bit sweeter."
Right.
But obviously, once you start, it's like an acquired taste. I mean, it's like if you drink scotch or something like that. Initially, you might be like, "Well, maybe it's not for me," but then eventually, you're gonna like start enjoying the bitterness once you start reaching into that direction. But yeah, everyone has been really, really welcoming and very, very supportive about what we're doing here.
But they say you should put a bit more sugar in it. Is that what they
Yeah,
said?
they
They like it sweeter.
they love the sugar in it. Our chocolates are not bitter, but we don't
Right.
add, for example,
I think
cocoa
people
butter.
confuse bitterness with intensity, right? They're intense.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
They're not familiarized with the cacao flavors,
Right.
and especially fine cacaos. So probably, but they love that experience.
Yeah, I mean, they
And-
didn't set it from a part that they rather have it sweet, but they were just like, maybe it will be more secure if you would like develop
Right.
products for a broader audience instead
Right.
of going to
Or they
niche
ask us to
segment.
add milk, and in order to make milk chocolate. And so,
white chocolate.
And white chocolate. they love that.
But we were very firm from the beginning because we knew
Mhm.
that we had this precious cacaos that no one else had. So we just want to promote them pure and
Right.
and give them pure and authentic flavors and practically do all the work in the fields and in the fermentation boxes and in the drying, so we can do the very least here in the transformation from the bean to the final product. So that's the intention. That's the idea.
What would you say is the style of your chocolate? How would you describe to people what is the style of VAICACAO chocolate?
Yes, I was saying it's exactly that. It's our style. It's practically let the cacao speak for itself. We're not really, we don't want to be like the most smoothest cacao chocolate bar out there. We don't want to be the sweetest either. We just want to like help people discover different flavors from Central America and practically understand that even though 80% cacao might look a little bit intimidating for the 80% cacao, dark chocolate fixation, then they can try a 75, which will be a little bit bitter than the 80 because the 80 had like more brown fruit aftertaste and it was more gentle in the palate. So yeah.
So basically you're trying to make chocolate that in a way that highlights the interesting flavors of the cacao, right? So
absolutely.
Simplicity, simple ingredients, and refining it, not to achieve a specific smoothness, like you said, but just whatever highlights the flavors. That's sort of what you're trying to.
Yeah, it's a mixture about flavor and the functionality of the chocolate because we also want to promote a healthy lifestyle with our chocolates. It's not really about having a candy, but having like a functional superfood that you can enjoy it on a gourmet level. And
I didn't ask this in the questions here, but just off the bat, what can you tell consumers about the health benefits of chocolate? Because a lot of people still associate chocolate with sweets and dessert and junk food. So what's healthy about chocolate? Good chocolate.
Yeah, well, cacao itself, it's considered a superfood because it's it is the richest source of magnesium and potassium in the world. So apart from the health benefits, it has lots of minerals, the amino acid L-tryptophan, which converts into serotonin. I'm sorry.
Serotonin.
Serotonin, which then converts into melatonin, which helps you sleep better. It also serves as a cardiovascular protector because it keeps your blood vessels more elastic. It helps
to lower cholesterol.
To lower the cholesterol as well. So yeah, it's very energizing, and unlike coffee, it will give you like the energy and it will keep you there. It will be like a slow burning energy, not like you won't have like the crash and burn from the caffeine once it's gone.
Yeah, that's a good point. Some people were talking about how when they switched to drinking chocolate every day, good chocolate instead of coffee, their mood and everything was more stable.
Yeah,
to get the health benefits.
Yeah, for the theobromine works differently compared to caffeine. I mean,
Right.
cacao also contains small amounts of caffeine,
Right.
but yeah, it's not that, you know,
You
not
don't
like
get the
coffee.
jitters. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the cacao is nutritious compared to coffee.
Mm.
So it is also
It's a food.
you know, it
Yeah.
helps you. It's a food, actually. Yeah, if you mix the cacao with proteins and everything, and I don't know, granola, it works really well, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously there will be a functional effect in chocolate if there are high contents of cacao. So I would recommend consumers to always look into the ingredient list and identify the cacao content, but then look even deeper, because manufacturers can claim 80% cacao and give you 50% cacao butter and add 30% cacao mass.
Right.
And that would be beneficial for your body. So
yeah, I always wish that they would be more transparent about that to label.
Yeah.
You understand, from like, if people are looking for high percentage and they want an 80% bar, but what if it's only 75% cocoa beans, right? That's where all the nutrients
Exactly.
are. So that's a good point.
Mm.
And I see on your website you have you sell ceremonial cacao. So what is ceremonial cacao and what is it used for?
Take it on, Ali.
No, you.
Well, ceremonial cacao, that's our version of what we're doing, inspired of how it was used back then and from our Mesoamerican ancestors. They would use it in a spiritual way. They would use it in a nourishing way. So right now we're living in this worldwide rediscovery of the health and therapeutical benefits of cacao. So what we're trying to do with our version of ceremonial cacao, it's practically replicate in a certain way the pureness of that drink, but inspired from the antique way it was done, but then now having it available and making it accessible to everyone with our finished products, which is the pure cacao paste, minimally processed and preserved in a way, treated in a way that it still contains all the volatile compounds that could be lost when it's overly treated or overly heated or processed. I mean, there's so many stages where you can transform the cacao beans and lose the volatile compounds. So the intention with this product is to keep it pure and very functional.
Okay. So is it a package of cocoa mass, like grated up cocoa mass that you said, ground up cocoa beans?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
It's the pure cacao. It's practically roasted at a different level, grinded at a different parameter, and that's it.
Okay.
Obviously, the cacao has to have good qualities, otherwise.
And how do you encourage your consumers to use it?
Well, they can use it in their daily practices, whether meditating or doing their daily routines in the morning. I'd rather use it in the morning because it's very energetic. You can also share it in a circle. We have to be careful about not falling into cultural appropriations and misleading marketings where they're talking about hand peeling and everything, which doesn't really give an added value. So yes, they can use it in their spiritual works and workshops and all their.
And so it's more of a drinking form. Is that how it's intended?
Yes.
Wow,
Only,
Yes.
yeah, it's a drinking form.
Yes. Well,
without sugar.
Right.
The cacao.
Right.
The cacao has to be consumed in at least 25 to 40 gram doses. So you'll get that adrenaline rush and your blood will start flowing faster. So it's very good to do like introspective work and like meditation or even practice yoga. I love it just to like have a cup of cacao and talk with people because it'll open up your heart. It'll get you to talk a lot. So it's nice. It's nice. It's very therapeutic.
So what would you say are the most important values of your company, of VAICACAO?
Yes, we're very committed with the ethics of the traceability and having pure and authentic products with respect with everyone who is involved in the supply chain, recognizing everyone's hard work from the farmers to us doing it here, and then acknowledging the whole supply chain and process and all the hard work that has been done. So
really focusing on the source, where the cacao is coming from, transparent ingredients, transparent in where you're sourcing and what you're paying as well. So
source, exactly.
I appreciate you sharing how much you pay as well, because that you know, it's as a business, you don't always want to reveal everything about your business. But like you said, it's if the craft chocolate world is talking about transparency, you know, so you kind of have to be an example, right? So I appreciate that. And it's
Exactly. No, we must do that.
And we also have to share lots of information because the farm gate price is not the same as having a FOB, which has already been incurred with a intermediary who put it at port. So we have to start giving more information so consumers can make an educated decision at the time whenever they make their purchases, because it's not the same thing to pay cacao here in Olbia, which obviously here in Olbia comes at a very, very higher price because you have to add logistics, you have to add export duties, the import duties, all the extra costs that are comprised into it. So yeah, I think it's time for everyone to start being a little bit honest about how much the farmers are really getting, not the guys who are fermenting or drying it, but the real farms. Otherwise, there's no sustainability.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's hard to know. You know, we talk about how much the chocolate maker pays for it, maybe what the co-op's getting, but we never really know a lot of times, unless it's a single estate directly to the farmer. We don't really know exactly how much they're making at the end of the day.
Yes, they're the forgotten, you know, sometimes, and we hate to, you know, to do. So that's why we care a lot, you know, to tell the story, the disparities and the prices.
Yeah, and it can be a bit tricky sometimes because you don't want to use the farmers as a way to market, you know, but you also want to be able to be honest about them and what they're doing and everything. So it's a fine line sometimes. Yeah,
many people are afraid to tell their source because they think that the whole competition is going to go and take them away. But I believe that if you're being honest, if you have a good commercial relationship as business partners, and you're actually always trying to give the farmer the best price that they can get, then there's no need to worry. I mean, it's a free market. So why will you try to hide something that it's not yours to hide?
Right. And I think it's an important topic to talk about too, because the whole fair trade movement that happened a while ago was supposed to be to allow the growers of whatever they're growing to have a say in how much they want to sell it for, right? And unfortunately, over years and years, it doesn't become that way anymore. There's sort of, again, it's up to whatever the people want to buy it for. So it's nice to see chocolate makers, again, sort of working directly with the farmers and asking them, you know, what do you want to sell it for, right? What's, you know, at the end of the day, all the work that they do, it has to be worth their while. Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's no cacao in the future, you know.
Yeah, it has to be sustainable.
It has to be sustainable for them. I mean, you know, this is the only way.
Yeah. Because if people are going to keep squeezing a little more, they're going to say, I'm going to go back to coffee. I'm going to grow something else. Exactly. It's not worth it, right? And then we're going to lose all this incredible cacao.
It's happening. It's happening already, and we are trying to, you know, to fight this probability that they will change the crops for another more, you know, with more rewards and everything.
Give money faster,
and it's really thin, you know, the line. So we must be very careful with it.
Yeah, and people think that fine chocolate, craft chocolate, is too expensive. But if it's a really good quality and it's made well, it's not expensive. It's the other stuff is just too cheap. It's
exactly
craft chocolate is not well understood, you know, from the people are not understanding that also cacao is like wine, olive oil, good cheese, you know, good liquors. Also, it's a process of it involves a lot of people and nature, first of all. And the process to making chocolate is also complex depending on what you're doing.
More than cheese, more than whiskey, more than wine.
I mean, we pay lots of, bottles of wine cost a lot, you know, but you don't complain, this is a good wine. But if you're trying to buy craft chocolate, you like, no, but this is too expensive. Yeah, because the GDOs, the supermarkets are selling cheap chocolates, commercial chocolates without actually know how can,
And, you know, and
This
it has
correct.
become such a luxury good that the way that it has been traditionally commercialized or distributed, it just adds too many costs to the end consumer. Like, for example, the farmer will get paid a very, very small fraction, less than 10%
Mhm.
of the final cost that a consumer will pay to
Mm.
for a chocolate bar. That's because if you start looking at it, every retailer will need between 50 to 30%. Then if you have a distributor, they also need a 30% at least. So add on to that, to all the very, very expensive operating cost of producing chocolate, because obviously at a small scale, you have to really do it for fun. Otherwise, you'll be doing something else, because you're not gonna
Yeah.
make a huge fortune out of it. So yeah, I guess that the whole way that fine chocolate and craft chocolate has been set up and distributed before, it made it really, really it's not really expensive, but I mean, it adds more cost to it that it shouldn't be there. So
Right. Right. Now it seems like more makers are trying to, in a way, simplify the series of events, you know, try and be as few middlemen as possible, grow the
yeah,
cacao, get it to the maker in the most efficient way.
yes.
What are some goals in regards to the work you do in El Salvador and for your company, VAICACAO? Do you have any ideas, any future goals that you want to share?
Yeah, well, our goals from the beginning were very clear. We had this marvelous cacao from El Salvador that no one knew about. Now we're starting to have these satisfactions that people relate Salvadorian cacao with our brand. So it's something very positive from us. Obviously, we want to continue to promote and encourage farmers to continue farming cacao. So every time that we're importing a direct import from El Salvador, it's practically like a mission accomplished, because we were able to not only convince them to do all the hard work to obtain the proper quality, but now we're paying it at better prices. So that has also been one of our goals that we have completed. And then we're still at such an early stage that we have so many objectives that we will take forever to tell you about. But yeah, we want to also continue to promote not only the Salvadorian cacao, but Salvadorian culture, as well as the whole Mesoamerican culture. And the ceremonial cacao, it's actually a very, very good vehicle to do this, because it brings back the ancient and the traditions to this modern age, where people want to know what they're eating, and they want to eat good foods that have a positive impact on their bodies. So it just makes sense. I mean, right now everything's lining up, and we're super happy to be a part of it.
Wonderful. Excellent.
Thanks.
What challenges did you face early on in your business? We kind of touched on some of these. It might be redundant, but what challenges did you face early on, and are they the same challenges today?
Oof. No. I mean, it's too complicated for me. My English is not that
No,
good.
it's okay. Go ahead.
Believe me, I already messed up lots of times, so it's okay.
Because everything, you know, when you start a company or a business model, you start drawing, you know, and dreaming. But at the end, making things is very, very hard. And I don't know, but in bean to bar and in craft chocolate, everything is like very difficult. Okay. And but what was really difficult for us is it was to understand where to start, from the finca, making the production in El Salvador, or moving to Italy, and trying to convince Italian markets, you know, to know Salvadorian cacaos and to buy eventually our products. So this was the first issue we had, and we established our company in El Salvador. Then in Italy we had a lot of taxes to pay at the beginning,
Yes.
and fees, and you know, accountants and laws, and you know, permissions and documents here, there, bureaucracy.
It's always the issue, bureaucracy, back then and now, but But yeah.
And we were doing that like at the same time in El Salvador and in Italy, so we were really flooded with
Wow.
regulations and everything. So it was really challenging for the first years, like the first 2-3 years, we weren't actually sure to continue to do that, actually.
And I know a little bit about dealing with Italian bureaucracy. Everything takes long time to get
It
done.
is.
One paper,
It
one
is.
signature for some reason takes
Absolutely.
years.
It's a nightmare.
And it's the
But
same,
also El Salvador.
yeah, it's the same thing in El Salvador.
Oh, is it?
Whenever we
Ah.
export,
Mhm.
if you go through customs, it's going to be an ordeal because
Wow.
everything has to be signed the way they want it. If there's like a comma
Handwritten.
misplaced and everything. So
Mm.
yeah, bureaucracy, it's always going to be a complicated matter that we have to pay attention with.
And that's, we laugh about it, but it's a good point because big companies have tons of people dealing with that specific thing. You're a couple doing everything and dealing with that too. That's a lot of work. Yeah.
I had a little bit of background doing that before, so I kind of like felt
Okay.
encouraged. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to do it.
But it was.
But yeah, I'm still learning.
Anyway.
But I guess that mainly also another challenge apart from bureaucracy would be like how to communicate our differences in a proper way that people can understand it, because craft chocolate can be so technical and fine flavor cacao can be so technical that we had to like learn again how to keep it like more to like a beginner's level whenever we talked. So, and it's still one of the biggest challenges up to now, like how do we communicate our differences, because we're not just like
it brings up a good point, because when you go, if you go to university or something, they always choose the best professors to teach the introductory classes, because it's actually very hard to summarize complicated ideas and things like that. So, you know, essentially we have to be professors every time we're dealing with consumers, to all the ideas in our head. Everything we want to say has to be boiled down in the most simplest, quickest way. It's tough.
So
yeah, otherwise people won't understand, you know.
Yes, otherwise it'll just be like, why do I have to pay this price, or what's the difference with your cacao if I like to eat something sweeter? So we have to like tell them that this is like all the work from 2009, from creating the farms to how we started here initially doing everything by hand with like a grape cracker to make wine, to eventually acquiring little by little the machinery that we are now using. So yeah, it's been a nice journey, and it's challenging to communicate it, because otherwise people can get lost with too much information or not really,
or technicalities.
Yeah, or technicalities. So yeah, I guess that's still one of the biggest challenges that at least I face with today. So much to tell and very, very, very difficult to keep it simple.
What sort of work needs to be done in order to foster and grow the fine cacao chocolate industry? So it's a big question, but what comes to mind when I say that? What needs to be done to continue growing this idea of fine cacao, fine chocolate?
You want to go for it,
Elisa?
Well, I guess that the first is to counter this conception that chocolate has to be cheap because you have to get it at the convenience store for less than $1. That's just, it has to be somewhat illegal, because if someone is buying that for $1, imagine how much the farmers are getting paid. So you have to factor in all of that, and that's just like, I guess that it has to be like a collective work from the whole industry.
That's a good point, because how much are they getting paid? In some places, like in West Africa, they don't get paid anything. Imagine working so hard for nothing at the end of the day. Would you do? Most of us wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah, it's modern day slavery. So I guess that one of the first tasks would be to come up with a transparency and say, okay, so what's going on in the industry? So let's look into it and start identifying areas where to improve. One would be recognizing everyone in the supply chain, not just the chocolate maker or the perfect store that carries all the brands, or the huge conglomerate from one country that acquires the cacao from many farmers, and then no one knows anything about the farmers. So being transparent, it's one way that we can improve, and then being respectful to people. I guess that as humanity, we all just have to learn to live with people which are different, which think different, which have different ambitions and expectations, and it's just about learning how to like coexist and acknowledge and appreciate what everyone does, and not trying to take advantage, because otherwise they'll go and just buy to the next country that produces more and sells it for cheaper. So yeah, it's a matter of understanding first to position the product at a better price, so people are actually going to support the whole supply chain until they reach farmers with proper prices.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, consumers, are probably willing to appreciate fine chocolate, but it's a bit of a hurdle because they have a lot of presumptions. Why is this bar so expensive? Oh, it's just probably good marketing, good branding, things like that. So it's going to take a lot of time to, if we're honest, then it'll happen. But if we start to be a little bit dishonest, then people are going to write it off. I've tried to sell chocolates to some people. I say, oh, it's fairly traded, transparent trade, and I'm like, everybody says that.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
And actually I understand that. You go to the supermarket, at least here in Italy, and the majority of chocolate bars, commercial ones, and have the logo for trade. So they say, oh, I'm already buying ethically sourced cacao. People are convinced they're doing great things buying those chocolates.
Yeah.
So
we have to address those
we
points.
have to add more and more information, and storytelling is important, and to show faces and people.
Now that we're talking about it again,
and we have, at least in Europe, we have a lack of regulations. So I think craft chocolate should be regulated in order to be preserved. In Italy, for example, there's a lot of maize chocolatiers, which are melting chocolates made from industries. Of course, they're not making the chocolates from scratch, and they only talks about their things they do.
they're artisan.
But people, they think that every maize chocolatier is making chocolate from scratch,
right?
Because they don't say anything about how they produce the chocolate. So people are very confused.
Well, because you could say, hey, do you make your chocolates? Yes, we make our chocolates. They do make the chocolates, but they don't make the chocolate, right? Yeah.
It's a misleading answer, yeah.
But if we have a regulation, which obliged you to actually tell people where your chocolate is made and who has been made, making your chocolate and everything, people probably will be less confused. So, and the craft chocolate industry will be protected. At least, for example, everybody can say chocolate is made from scratch. Actually, every chocolate is made from the beans.
Yeah,
right.
But what is a craft maker? I mean, we need to
So regulation to make it very quick and easy for consumers to know the difference right away. You're this, you're that. Yeah, I understand that. Sorry, go ahead.
To categorize the whole segment would be, I guess that's what you were saying for regulating, or
yeah. It's
like, for example, there's a difference.
What makes you an artisan bean to bar maker?
Right.
So define that.
And what are the different categories? Like, for example, 2-ingredient chocolates with a chocolate which is made with a stone mill, or another one which is made with spheres, which have different processes. So yeah, it's different categories that it could be misleading if you just blend everything together and say everything is the same thing.
Yeah. I always, every tasting I have, everything I do, I always have to differentiate chocolatier, chocolate maker, and then also commercial chocolate maker and the fine chocolate maker, right? And that's where it gets even more complicated sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah. How can people connect with you? How can they purchase your chocolate? Where do you ship your products?
We are growing online mostly. So, our market is in Italy, and people buy from our website, but also from all Europe. It's pretty easy to ship out and everything. But yes, our web, we have a online shop, so you can buy easily.
You can order there, and we have collaborations with different shipping partners, and we can ship anywhere in the world. Obviously, part of our challenge now is to strategize inventory in different locations so we can reach people without having or
in shipping costs.
shipping costs.
Charge, yeah, a little bit higher.
Right, right. I can't imagine too, in Canada, we have a few months of hot summer, but you guys have hot weather all year round, and that must be challenging.
Yeah,
ship.
but that's why also we do the 2 ingredients chocolate bars and the ceremonial cacao are more like resilient. To say. They won't melt easy.
I mean, they will melt, but they will hold better. Like
True.
just last weekend, I always enjoy after I go and surf, I eat a little bit of chocolate, and this chocolate didn't really melt. I mean, it started to like bend, but it didn't melt completely. Right. And I mean, it's a different type of product than the regular chocolate because we don't add any butter to it. So I guess that really makes it a little bit more resistant to heat.
It's a bit harder, higher melting point, a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, it helps a lot.
So obviously, if you leave it in the car outside in a Sardinian summer day, everything's gonna melt.
Yeah, well, you guys can push the drinking chocolate in Sardinia. This way, you don't have to worry about the melting.
Well, it's very, very interesting because when the whole chocolate industry takes a break in the summer hot months, actually in Sardinia, this is peak season. So for us, it's just like we never stop. So here we're very lucky to work with tourism. So we are, and also we are the only bean to bar makers
here in the island. So it's kind of exotic. So gourmet stores and hotels, they eventually wants to showcase our products instead of commercials one, which is good actually. The market here the people are really interested in.
It's nice to hear.
The crafting,
because it sounds like Sardinians like to support Sardinian, products and foods, and that's really helpful. Yeah, they're
really supportive, but also Italian. In general, they support you, they understand what quality is and they appreciate the people behind it. I think this is cultural in Italy. I mean, people really love to spend a little bit more of money in order to have good food.
Right.
And when they find you, they will become your customers and loyal to you. I mean, we feel that.
Very nice, very nice. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure learning about you guys and talking to you. So thank you so much for this time, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Take care, and I'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Download the free Bean to Bar app to connect with incredible chocolate makers from around the world. Also be sure to visit beantobarworld.com, your portal for all things fine chocolate, virtual tastings, free learning resources, research, and much more. Subscribe to the newsletter to stay in touch and donate to the free app and free resources here. Contact me for any chocolate-related questions you may have.